Hey everybody, my name is Scott Solomon. We have a great session here for you today. Our speaker is Matt Hamlin, Director of Products from Spanning by EMC. Matt has spoken at several of our events before, and each time it's been a really great session, so I'm really looking forward to this. And since we only have 30 minutes, I'm going to let him jump right in. Matt, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Scott. Again, reflect his words. Thanks to everybody for attending today. I know everyone's busy, and we appreciate the time. And thanks to Better Cloud and the team for setting this up. It should be a good session and a series of sessions so far, actually. So I'm going to start off today with a quick statistic related to cyber risks and how they tend to be all we hear in the news today. For this session, I'll use it as kind of a lens or a framework to focus on some key areas of IT governance that each of you should be considering as you move to SaaS applications. And the specific here is from an SEC report focused on cybersecurity as it relates to small and medium businesses, which may apply to quite a few folks on the phone. And that's that 60% of cyber attacks are currently targeted at SMBs. We hear in the news lots of information about the breaches at Target and a number of the other large organizations, but there's still a lot of damage that can be done and information that can be gathered or destroyed in small businesses as well. That report also talks about the average cost of response and recovery of those attacks and breaches to be around $20,000 or more on average. And that can have a huge impact, obviously, on your productivity and your organization, especially if you are a small business. So those risks obviously are out there. My goal for this presentation is not to focus on cybersecurity and the risk in general. Again, sort of use it as a lens to focus on three areas that I've seen in my experience that are critical to control the data that you have in SaaS applications to protect it well. As we go through here, please think about your organization and how you're addressing these three practices and the tactics that are involved with making sure that they're well controlled. Also, think about who in your organization potentially should be involved or has responsibility for those areas and whether or not they're covering them well. And at the end, my hope is that you either confirm that you're covering things very well and increase your confidence around protection of your data, or that you're eliciting conversations with others in your organization to just bring these topics to light and make sure that your risk footprint related to data in a SaaS application is well covered. So we'll talk briefly about why data protection and data security in a cloud application is a shared responsibility between you and the provider, your SaaS provider. I'll cover best practices for automating user access, data security practices, and then also data protection. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about spanning and what we do and how we can help alleviate the risk of data loss with automated backup and recovery for Google Apps or Office 365. So this is a topic that I cover a lot with analysts, customers, prospects, which is that when you elect to move your application into a SaaS application like Google Apps, the SaaS provider themselves and their services, their responsibility for the data that's in their platform and for the platform itself is really focused on these things. And this is, which is, they're all centered around their application. They provide very high levels of platform security and mechanisms for you to control access to data and put control sharing settings, and also provide a lot of things kind of out of the box related to intrusion detection and denial of service attacks. They do well around that to serve that application and provide it to you. They're very focused on availability. In the SLA, they will have stated uptime, right? Very often it's 3 nines. But in that availability, it's also availability of the data that you put in there. They guarantee and have SLAs related to their ability to protect that data and not lose it for anything that they do on their end. So if a hard drive fails or if there's a software issue, anything related to their responsibility for the platform, they'll cover very well. They also do a really good job, and they focus on reliability. That's reliability of their software itself. So you can rest assured that their Google Apps or Office 365 and the product that you're using and your employees are using, the application itself has been well built, and all standard practices have been evaluated to make sure it's very reliable. And then one of the things that's a big benefit for organizations is kind of the resiliency, right? It's the fact that they take care of all the hard work related to making sure that the data and the service is always up and running. They've got multiple data center locations and failover. If there's a potential cybersecurity attack, they're fairly resilient to those and react fairly quickly. I think in the last 2 days I've seen news stories in Office 365 where there's been direct ransomware attacks against that platform. One was in Australia where there was an attack executed, but Microsoft recognized it and blocked all the different ways that those attacking the systems within minutes, I believe. There was another one yesterday reported where it was a little bit longer before they started blocking that cybersecurity attack. But that's resiliency that they build into their platform, where they can quickly adapt, quickly react, and make sure the services are secure as quickly as possible. Now, your responsibility in the shared responsibility is really focused on your data. You're putting your data, your critical business information in their platform, in their service. And your responsibility is focused on controlling access to that data by managing accounts and access rights and access policies well. Obviously, when new employees join the organization, you have to create accounts for them and give them certain levels of rights and control over certain aspects of the data in that platform. Application configuration is your responsibility, securing the platform, setting up retention policies the right way so you're keeping the data when you want to keep it and not destroying or losing data when you don't intend to. Office 365 and Google both have some level of data security policy configuration. You can use that to secure and govern the data. And then you're also responsible for data protection, backup and recovery. If you or your employees or any integrations that you've established with the platform, if they change data, move data, delete data, corrupt data, or even in the case of a ransomware attack that comes in and encrypts data, you're still responsible for having a backup copy of that so you can quickly recover from those situations. So in this shared responsibility model, again, the Google and Microsoft will focus a lot on their platform and their ability to protect your data and give you the controls to do so. But you still have to make sure that you're covering all these critical areas yourself and following best practices and having these items in place to ensure that you are well protected and your risk is as low as possible. Okay, so I'll cover the best practices around identity management, data security, and data protection. They are fairly high level. I'll talk a little bit about some solutions that are out there and things you can do, stories I've heard as we go along the way. Real briefly, I'm going to kind of come back to the cybersecurity framework, and again, not to focus a lot on this, but just to use it as a lens that we can see where these different IT practices apply to this framework. And again, I'm focusing on this. Well, one thing that I actually heard this week from an analyst was that about 37% of IT budget for this year is focused on cybersecurity. So it's made a very, very quick leap in the amount of money and focus on it as opposed to other traditional IT practices. And so it's getting funded, and lots of projects are coming into organizations related to it. So this is the NIST cybersecurity framework. I won't go into great detail here, but it has 5 pillars, which is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And there are obviously policies and practices and solutions and software and awareness that go with each one of these. What I want to focus on is protect, detect, and recover. And those were some of the 3 pillars in IT practices that I'll drill down into a little further. The first one's identity management. Under detect, I've got data loss prevention, tactics, and then the recover. That's where spending can come in and help out with backup and recovery. So focusing on identity and access management, I've got a statistic here from a security periodical which says that 55% of attacks come from insiders, and that's collectively with malicious insiders as well as some accidental behavior that could expose data externally, where external people can find it much, much easier. So I actually spent quite a bit of time in my career in identity management, and one of the things that we discuss as the world has evolved and as many people started adopting cloud services is, we said, identity management or identity is the new security perimeter, because most things and most people's access to data and applications, either behind the firewall or more importantly outside the firewall and cloud applications, it is gated by authentication, authorization, and their identity. So managing those can be very, very critical. So best practices here are to develop repeatable user lifecycle processes. Make sure that you've got clear and understood and reportable and repeatable processes for onboarding new users, providing access based off of the role and only the access they need. As people move through organizations, change roles over time, make sure that they're getting new access to do their job, but also you're taking away any access to data and applications that aren't associated with their job anymore. That's just increasing your risk footprint for people to collect data over time, collect access over time, and potentially perform malicious insider activity. Potentially more importantly than giving access is revoking access. User offboarding process should be automated, reported, and repeatable. Better Cloud, who's helping host today, they've got some solutions for Google Apps and Office 365 to help you, define and automate some of these processes to ensure they're always in place and are reportable and repeatable. One of the things that we've done for our customers related to the offboarding is a number of customers will, as individuals leave the organization, they will remove or suspend access in Google Apps or Office 365, obviously reducing the cost associated with that account and also decreasing the risk footprint of having so many accounts out there. And they'll keep the data that that person had in spending backup for an extended period of time in a restorable format. So having the data that's critical to an individual that might be necessary to give to someone else in the organization at a later time, we give our customers a way to keep that data around, but kind of reduce the risk of exposure in Google or Microsoft, and to be able to put it back whenever necessary. The other best practice here is implementing strong authentication for all users. Definitely and highly recommend that you make sure that you have a single sign-on set up to these platforms, hopefully tied in with any other corporate identity platforms that you have. You can automate access, and for large organizations, typically you have an identity management product in place, whether it's something like Okta or SailPoint or Oracle, things like that. Or for you just using the native authentication authorization, use that as much as possible. Keep the number of accounts as low as possible. The other thing that we see very often and highly encourage is to implement strong password policies and policy aging controls, making sure that there's strong passwords in place, that they're aging out. You're requiring your employees and service accounts and administrators to change their passwords over time. And for your executives or administrators or key people in the organization, definitely also recommend multi-factor authentication to turn on that functionality that requires a token to be sent to the person's iPhone with a second level of authorization before they can log in. In this area, we're also focused on this just as we build our solutions. So all of our solutions, including Google and our Microsoft product, leverage the security and identity in the platform itself. So when you log into our service to access the data in our platform to restore data, whether you're an administrator or an end user, we leverage the authentication and authorization mechanisms that are in Google and Microsoft itself, making sure that we're not creating one more door or one more set of accounts that somebody could use to get access to data. Right, the next best practice is data loss prevention. So securing the data itself. You're going to put all of your corporate data or a lot of unstructured data that your employees generate into Google Drive or OneDrive for Business. That's important information, and you need to make sure that you understand what's out there, what's included, what kind of content is there, and that you're properly protecting it, making sure it's not shared with people it shouldn't be shared with, either internally, but more importantly, externally. And so here's a statistic that says that around 26% of corporate documents in a cloud service are at high risk of exposure. Typically, that's related to the amount of access that is given to it, again, internally or externally with customers or the public or partners. In Google Drive and in OneDrive for Business, the data owner, right, your employees in the organization, they have a lot of control, a lot of power over generating critical content to your organization, and then quickly and easily sharing it with whomever they like. And so having controls in place to understand what's there and what's shared is very important. Best practices here are to establish data classification and data security policies. Understand what you have in these platforms. There's great tools out there to help you with this. One good way to get started is do some audit reporting to identify your data sharing posture. Run some reports, run some scans to understand what is there, what percentage of data is shared externally, is it appropriate or not. So just get a gauge on where you are. You also want to make sure that you're looking at each user's account and what they've granted access to, right? If it's fairly easy to give access to data in Google or Microsoft to third-party applications, and end users can sometimes do that, right? So you want to make sure you have a handle on what other applications is integrated with Google, Microsoft, what grants are given to certain APIs, and what the risk is there. And then lastly, to make sure that you're falling in line with your compliance related to any oversight that you've got in your organization, whether it's HIPAA or SOX or PCI. They will definitely make sure and scan for and have you prove that you don't have any PI, personal identifiable information like credit cards, security, social security numbers, medical information available for a wide set of individuals, right? And this is the foundational level of security breaches and what malicious outsiders are looking for. They're looking to come in, hold your data ransom and get money, come in and destroy data potentially, but most often it's to come in and find data and then to pull it back out and use that for malicious behavior outside. And so limiting what is in these platforms and having a good understanding is vital. The other best practice here is to implement preventative and real-time or near real-time policy enforcement. You can, once you understand where you are, what data you have out there, who has access to it, then you can start building policies around what should be granted access to different individuals, and how do I enforce that over time. And so in the different platforms, there's different options. So in Microsoft, there are some built-in DLP functions. They have an item called EMS, which includes some policy enforcement and data scanning. Google has some basics, but there's a really great third-party tools out there as well, Better Call being one of them, that can help you set policies that, for example, saying any document that has the word confidential anywhere in it cannot be shared externally. In some cases, you can prevent people from sharing it. In other cases, like in Google Drive, once it's identified that it has been shared, this can be revoked immediately, or just you can just notify an administrator of that. But having those ongoing preventative and detective policies in place will ensure that all the good work that you do to go understand what's out there, what your risk is, can be carried for day by day by day, enforcing those policies and best practices. All right, the third pillar here, the third IT governance practice that we encourage you to focus on as you move to a SaaS application is data protection. We did a survey with a third party. It's been about 6 months now, I think, where we surveyed, I think, around 1,200 IT professionals and asked them a number of questions. But one of them was, have you ever lost data in a SaaS application? And 80% of the respondents had experienced some form of data loss, whether that's lost data because an account was deleted and all the content associated with that account was gone forever, or potentially an end user moving a large set of email to their recycling bin and then emptying the recycling bin and the data was gone forever, or whether it was a external or internal malicious behavior or ransomware. Some form of data loss was reported in 80% of the surveys individuals. So best practices here are to establish a backup and recovery services to prevent data loss. Google and Microsoft do a great job of making sure that they don't lose your data because of hardware failure, software failure, natural disasters, anything related to their application and platform. They won't lose your data. But the way that you do lose data in a SaaS application is is from these things: user mistakes, malicious insiders and outsiders, configuration errors or ransomware attacks, anything where the actions that are occurring, create, update, delete, change, any of those actions to Google or Microsoft seem like legitimate actions, right? They don't know if they were intended or not. They don't know if it was you or not, right? If somebody gains access to your data because they've compromised a password somewhere, they don't know it's not that person who has effective rights and legitimate rights to change data. They can change it for malicious reasons, and the Microsoft and Google have a good way of understanding the difference there, right? So any of the things related to human behavior that changes or moves or destroys data, you need to be able to have copies of your data available for recovery to cover those situations. The best practice here, and will be highly encouraged as we talk to customers and prospects, is to focus on the restore processes and procedures and the performance of that, right? Backing up data is one thing, but you do it to make sure that you can restore it quickly and easily and effectively, okay? To ensure that you are comfortable with those scenarios, I encourage you to perform some tests on restores. We pretend that you did get a ransomware attack and 1,000 files in one person's folder were now encrypted, and you need to get those 1,000 files back. Run through that scenario in your environment. See how you would go about getting those back, right? If it's Google Drive or if it's OneDrive, you might be able to have versioning turned on and go file by file and find the previous version. Maybe not. It depends on what type of file and what you have set up. Make sure that you empower end users to find and restore their own lost data. That's something that we focus on expanding quite a bit. We give administrators full access to find and restore data for the employees, but we also give employees and end users the ability to quickly log into our solution, find data lost, and put it back quickly. We always kind of say the fastest way, the fastest path to recovery is that the person who owns the data and lost the data can put it back themselves. Okay? And lastly, this comes up a lot when we talk to customers still, that when you say, well, who is protecting your data? Who's responsible ultimately
it's
for data
about
loss?
the power of Google Apps Script and Cloud SQL. We have James Ferreira and Topher Colopy from Ignite Synergy. These guys are
not true. And so I encourage you to go out and look at their SLAs, MSAs, or what are they saying related to data recovery? Do they have anything in place that will make you feel confident or reduce your risk around if you made a mistake or if a hacker got in, what will they do for you? And I've read them all, and they don't have strong SLAs related to that. They will do with your data what you tell them to do. Okay, so a little bit about us. Spanning is leaders in SaaS data protection. We are part of ENC. We were acquired about 18 months ago. We started out in the market with backup and recovery for Google Apps and launched in 2011. It provides backup and recovery for Gmail, Drive, contacts, calendars, and sites. In 2014, we added Salesforce to the portfolio. And then in 2015, we added Office 365. So for Office 365, we back up Mail, Calendars, and OneDrive for Business. All the products are software as a service themselves. They all have 14-day free trials. They're very, very easy to get started. They're priced per user per year. So real quickly, I kind of want to go through a data loss scenario which would be related to ransomware. So if someone within the organization, they are syncing data down to their laptop, they extracted some malware or ransomware, and then encrypted files on their laptop that were in their synchronized OneDrive for Business folder or Google Drive folder. This example will be for OneDrive for Business. It will encrypt those files locally, and then those will sync up to the cloud. They'll sync up to that platform and encrypt in there. So if that's the case, in our product, we would allow the end user or administrator to log in. They could go to the user, look at their OneDrive data as it was at a certain point in time. This is one of the areas where our product does very, very well. We allow you to go back to any point in time for Google Drive or OneDrive for Business and see what your drive looked like at that exact day in that time. Okay? You can then go and select folders, files, whatever was encrypted, and restore that directly back into Office 365 or Google Drive. If you're an administrator, we will give the option to restore back into the same user's account or even to restore into a different user's account. And most of our customers will use this to move data around as individuals come into and leave the organization. Right? So once that activity kicks off, we'll put our data back into OneDrive for Business or Google Drive. We put it back with as much fidelity and just like it came out. So the sharing settings can go back. Any tags or folder structure goes back as well. And then here's the end result. This is the data that would be put back into this individual's account. We do create a folder called Restored On, so we do some non-destructive restore, and all that data goes back very, very quickly. So with that, I'll wrap up. To learn more information, you can go to spanning.com. I also have a few specific links here for Google or Office if you're interested in one or the other. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Scott real quick to turn on. We have a poll. We have one really quick poll question. Scott?
We do have a few minutes to answer some questions, Matt. I saw a few in there. So if you have any questions and you want to send them into the GoToWebinar app, you can do so now. Looks like we have about 50% voted so far, so you get that last 50%.
Scott? Can you hear me?
Hey, Matt, sorry.
Yeah, I think we had an audio issue on our side, so I just switched over to using the computer audio versus phone. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you fine.
Pretty good. Wonder how much we missed.
Not much, just my voice encouraging people to take the poll.
Okay, good. So at this point, we've got a few minutes left. We can take some questions. Do you see any? But I'm not sure if I can see questions. Scott, do you see any questions in the questions area?
Yeah, I see a few. One is in regards to the poll. This is from Dan. You guys will love this. Not much of a question, but it says, that's a bad poll question. Where's the no, we use and love spanning backup option? Let's see. Do you know what is default retention of an email in Office 365 trash or for purged trash?
Sure, yeah. So Mail in Office 365, there's a few options there. When things go to the recycling bin, I think by default email is 30 days in the recycling bin. I think you can change that to be unlimited depending on which version of 365 you have. Once something is purged from the email recycling bin, it goes into a purged folder, which is sort of an admin-only second recycling bin, where it lives for around 14 days. And of course, if you have full e-discovery services turned on as part of your package with 365, you can keep those emails pretty much indefinitely for legal reasons. And we have customers that are using that in conjunction with our solution, because e-discovery typically is, especially in 365 and in Google with Google Loan, it's focused on e-discovery, legal reasons to keep that data around, and most of the products just do export, not restore.
Great. This one is from Andrew. Will spanning work with Jump Cloud and specifically AO Docs?
So two questions there, I guess, and I should have covered that kind of in the same sign-on section. So since our products leverage Google or Microsoft authentication to gain access to our product, whatever you have set up in those environments will be the authentication and authorization mechanism. We have a lot of customers who have set up single sign-on in their Jump Cloud or something else, so when they log into Google, that's the credentials they use, the service they use. The same authentication flow will be used to get into spanning backup. On the AO Docs side, we definitely have a lot of customers that use AO Docs as well. I believe that AO Docs provide services to all the accounts in your environment, but they also create a special AO Docs account. And so we can back that one up just as we can all the rest of the accounts that are there.
Okay, this one is from Carl. Are you limited on how much data can be backed up for the Google Apps / O365 environment? Is it just a latest backup, or can I have several backups?
Yeah, all of our services provide automated daily backup of all the data you can get your hands on. You can also perform manual backups through the UI if you need time,
point in time during the day. We keep data, it's unlimited storage and unlimited version. So the first day you start your 14-day trial, the data we back up for all the accounts, we'll keep all that data and the versions available as long as you're still an expanding backup customer. So the unlimited storage, unlimited versions are all included in the per user per year pricing.
Okay, this one is from Sebastian. Do you support non-Google documents like Word, Excel, or PDFs for the Google app backup/restore? On your website, I read it was not supported, but it seemed on your presentation that perhaps it may be.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, if you look at the website, maybe I can find what you're referring to. Yeah, we back up all the data that will be in Google Drive, whether that's Google data formats or any other document, right? So whether it's Excel or Word or a video or a PDF, whatever it is, it's in Google Drive, we can back it up and restore it. There are a few sets of things that we can't back up from Google Drive. I don't believe we only can because they're not available through the API. Things like Google Forms, password-protected PDFs, things like that. But in general, anything that's in your employees' Google Drive accounts, we will back up and make it available for direct restore.
Okay, and then it looks like Sebastian also had one last question. Do you manage restoring files to a different user when the file was encrypted on the drive?
It depends. So fundamentally, our product will perform restores between accounts. That's our cross-user restore. It depends on what technology I think was used for the encryption. I know there's some solutions out there that will encrypt files in Google Drive. And the key will kind of sit with the file into the package. I think you could restore those and it will be fine. There are other encryption mechanisms in place that are tied to a specific user and their specific key. Maybe they have an issue there. So it really just depends on the encryption technology.
All right, well, thank you very much, Matt. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera back on. So we have one last session in 30 minutes or so at 3 p.m. This is a session I'm really excited about. It's a roundtable with four really intelligent IT professionals from BuzzFeed, Essence Digital, Cumulo, and Better Cloud. So it's going to be a great session, so we'll see you back in 30 minutes. And Matt, I just want to thank you and everyone over at Spanning for your participation.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.